I'm going to take a 10,000-foot view. You've been hearing right on the ground, and I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about the Common Core coming from the state. And what I'd like to do is untangle a web that's been created at the state level called the Regents Reform Agenda, of which the Common Core state standards are a piece of. And I think that as I talk with parents and community members, we take a paintbrush and we paint the whole Regents Reform as Common Core. So I want to untangle that a little bit to help us take a step back and take a look at, well, what exactly is the Common Core state standards? The Regents Reform Agenda includes the testing. We're going to set that aside. It also includes accountability for teachers and principals and the way that they are evaluated. We're going to set that aside. It also includes income, equity, achievement gaps. We're going to set those aside. Those are the things that I think that we can get very passionate about and talk a lot about. It would take much more time to talk about than today. The Common Core state standards are really just guidelines for what students should know and be able to do at the end of a K-12 journey. And again, one thing that we often confuse is that we want to call the standards the curriculum. The standards are not the curriculum. The standards tell us what? They tell us that students need to be able to put sentences together, to read, write, listen, speak, computate, etc. It is the curriculum that tells us how. So we're also going to set the curriculum aside because I think that that's another area in which people become very passionate. So why do we have state standards, and are they good or bad? Should we have them? Well, my esteemed colleagues here, Dr. Nicole Williams spoke a little bit about some of the reasons across the state why we need to have standards. I'll add some more when she gave the data right at the beginning about Poughkeepsie. We are in the knowledge explosion, and you all must feel that. You know, it used to take hundreds of years to double the amount of data or the amount of information in any content area. And you may know that certain people who take time off from work, maybe they're ill, they broke a leg, they're having a baby, but if they're taking a year off from work, for example, nurses, and they come back to certain departments, they find that the information that they have is now obsolete. We've already bypassed what it is that they knew. When I graduated from 6th grade, we got new textbooks, social studies textbooks. President Kennedy was the last picture in the textbook. And think about what has happened just in social studies since President Kennedy. We no longer have the time to learn every piece of history that maybe you learned or I learned when we were in school. We need to learn more conceptual information. We don't need to talk about every civil war. We need to understand what is civil war, what that means and what is the effect on a country, and how is that still existing today. Because we don't have the time to study every battle of every civil war that ever occurred. So if we conceptually understand it, the detail can come later. Thomas Friedman wrote a book a number of years ago called The World is Flat. And if you've read that, you know about the challenges of the world. Our students graduating today are competing with the world. I only had to compete with my community and maybe the state. And so as I look back at the table of students that are here today, I wonder how it is that they will compete in a global world. We know that in the United States, many of our low-skill jobs and even our technology jobs are being sent to other countries. We use technology today to have work done. If you read Thomas Friedman's book, you'll find that perhaps your taxes, even if you take it to somebody here in the United States, is probably computed by someone out of the country. And so we need to have students who are who learn rapidly and are learning things different from what I learned in school. Technology has taken over all the jobs. Students used to say, I could probably drop out of school and I could be an auto mechanic. Not anymore. There is more circuitry in a car than there was in the first lunar landing module. People say, well, I could graduate and I could be a custodian. I don't need to learn math or technology. Well, go down in the basement of the school districts now. There's not a coal burner down there. There's a computer down there. There's a computer that runs the whole system. And we need to know more about technology. Our students who are going to compete in this world need science, technology, engineering, math, the STEM program, as well as other skills as well. What are the challenges of having our own local standards? We want to do things locally, and we certainly want to buy locally. But as we think locally, not in that way, think about this. If you were from New York State a number of years ago, you were learning about, I'll pick on the Civil War again, the Civil War, and students in Florida were also learning about the Civil War, but what were they learning? And to what level of rigor were they learning that? And so an 80% from the student graduating from Florida, was that the same 80% of a student graduating from New York, or even between cities in New York? And so setting standards helps us to have a level of which all of our students that we can count on. So when they go in the world of work, or if they choose to go to post-secondary, then we can count on certain level of skill and knowledge that they have. A number of years ago, about 40% of students who were coming into colleges needed to start college with remedial courses because the standard was not to the level that they expected. So the standards are only the what, not the how. And as we look at the standards, there are many things that they're asking us to do, but it's the curriculum that I think that parents struggle with. The curriculum of the math, in particular, or ELA, or social studies, etc. And that's where I think we need more local control, is what we teach in the curriculum, not the standard that is set across the state or across states. There's a reality, though. And I'm very aware of that reality. We have unfunded mandates. The state asks more and more of us and does not fund what it is that we are doing. There are political agendas, and I won't get in them today, but I bet you know most of them, that are tied to public schools and whether we're even going to continue to exist. We also had a rapid implementation of a full system 4 years ago. And now there is an expectation that we fully implement that system and have it up and running when so many changes came upon us. A lot of pushback there, and I understand why. Change is a process, not an event. Saying that it is so does not make it so. We are creating and implementing a testing system that itself has not been tested. And there is a statistical model that I certainly don't understand. And so there's less transparency in how it is that we understand how we're being graded. And we're linking those tests to teacher and principal outcome. And is that really fair? We have not looked at, the one thing about the standards that we have not done is we have not looked at those standards in relationship to cognitive development. And is it appropriate for all levels of children? So my talk today was basically to begin to unwind the web of the Regents reform. And if you want to talk outside about the Regents reform, I have a lot to say about that. But I would encourage you to take a look on the web, take a look at the standards, because the standards in and of themselves are not so bad. As a matter of fact, they might give us some direction. and separate them from the rest of the reform, of which there is a reality. Thank you.